Hey, it's the chaplain checking on you again. I've got a bonus episode that I want you to hear. Ward Jenkins is back with us again. He's a veteran LAPD cop and a fellow police chaplain here in Kansas City, and he sat down with me recently to talk about what can be done after a line-of-duty death. I didn't give him any other prep. I just told him that another chaplain had emailed me asking for some advice, and then Ward and I got together and recorded a conversation. We definitely look at this from a police chaplain's point of view, but I really think any supervisor, wellness officer, FOP representative, or peer support member would get a lot out of this discussion. Here are two police chaplains talking about what can be done after a line-of-duty death. I got an email from somebody, I'll let them remain nameless, but the agency they work for had a couple homicides, unrelated, but pretty close together in time. And so they were just reaching out and saying, hey, as a chaplain, what can I do to support my agency? What kind of things should I be looking for? And the problem is the correct answer is like 1,000 things.
Right.
There's an endless list of concerns and nuances and the kinds of things where a chaplain could support or help or lend a hand, whether it's counseling or just being supportive, generally speaking.
Right.
There's just an endless list.
Sure.
And I feel a little bit trapped by the long list of answers that would be correct.
I get you. And when I hear that question, I think of two things. I think about sort of I'm in crisis, it just happened, what do I do? I think that's where I would probably start a response from my own experience. But then that leads me to also ask a question, what are you as a chaplain doing to prepare for this? Because it's going to happen in your agency and it hasn't happened yet, or it hasn't happened in 20 years or 15 years, which is the same thing as saying it hasn't happened yet.
Yeah. And if I could maybe give one warning to a chaplain or to a commander, maybe you're a sheriff or a police chief or whatever listening to this, one warning I received when I was in Bible college, we had a class where a very well-respected hospital chaplain came in and talked to us. And we knew this guy was this guy's the expert. I mean, he's dealing with death every day, and he's so good at it.
Right.
And he said that his secret sauce, his one thing that he hung his hat on, was that he shut up. And so often we want to be problem solvers.
Right.
And we value having the right word at the right time. But whatever you do, when there's a line of duty death, sometimes just being present and not saying anything is pretty important.
You just stole the one thing I was going to say.
Oh, no!
Because that's it, And in chaplain training, you hear over and over and over, this is a ministry of presence.
Yes.
And that's what you do. You show up, you're present.
Mm-hmm.
Now, when you show up, I think what you just said is very helpful. And I'm going to draw from past experience. My best friend was killed in the line of duty a long time ago. And I was a patrol officer at the time. I had to go out and do the notification to the family with the chaplain and the captain. And I also was on duty when he was murdered.
Yeah.
And so I can tell you from my personal experience, the things that impressed the most upon me positively. Okay.
Okay.
One of them was arriving at the station, and I had learned that Danny had been killed, and a sergeant just wrapped me up in a big hug.
Wow.
Never in my career have I ever thought of having physical contact.
You don't go around hugging your fellow police officers?
No, it won't work. Don't do it. If you're a chaplain, don't do that. But there may be a time when that's okay, and this is a time when that's okay. This is a time when someone might need to just be hugged. Yeah. And you have to read it. You have to read the situation.
It's not going to be true of every officer or every situation.
And let's be very cognizant of gender differences and comfort levels and all that. But don't be afraid to put your arm around somebody or to hug somebody. Don't be afraid, because that actually did probably, this was 30-something years ago now, and I still remember that hug like it was yesterday. Yeah. So that was huge. Yeah. The other thing that happened to me is that I was at the family home, and Danny's widow asked me, Ward, why did this happen? And wow. all I could tell her was I didn't know.
Yeah.
And this gets back, this is what you just talked about a second ago. Sometimes you just have to shut up. Don't try to have the answers.
Yeah.
Don't worry about having the answers.
Oh, and the temptation for that is so strong. Where people who have answers, we want to always have an answer, especially in that really sensitive moment.
Right.
But
and this is not the time for that. This is simply the time for you to make a response. And looking back on it, I know God gave me wisdom at the time, and because I searched for an answer real quick, like, what am I going to tell her to make sense out of this? And then I had to be honest.
Yeah.
And I told her, I can't make sense out of this.
No.
And so the only thing I can tell you is that I'm here for you.
Yeah. Yeah. A lot of violent, accidental deaths, tragedies like that there's not a reason.
No.
It's random, whether you're talking about experiences people have in war or in violence on the street. There's not a reason. The same event could happen 100 more times and your officer would not have been hurt.
Right.
But this time they were.
Right.
And there's not anything anyone necessarily did wrong. It just happened.
Right. And the other thing I would say, and this is probably... So this is the initial, your first hour of contact is going to be severe shock.
Yeah.
Unbelief.
It'll be a blur.
It's a blur. And this is the time, most of all, to be quiet, to be present. Death always, in my experience, brings about guilt of some sort.
Mm-hmm.
Heaven forbid that the officer who was killed had an argument with their spouse before they went to work that day or night. But that can be, that's a reality.
Yep.
Or if there was something left undone or something left unsaid, there's always going to be guilt expressed by people who survive and who live. And you know what? The officers who are on duty when their fellow officer was killed are also going to have guilt that they weren't there at the scene.
Yeah. What could they have done differently?
Oh my gosh, I was in the drive-thru getting food. I was whatever. I wasn't there. I should have been there. And so be prepared for that, because in a line of duty death, I mean, we need to be able to respond on a multiple of fronts. And this is why having it more than one chaplain, if you can, if you're a small agency, then you need to develop the other spiritual leaders that are with you to help you. We sort of need to coordinate on this, but there's going to be a need for someone at a hospital. There's going to be a need for someone at the station. There's going to be a need for someone at the family's house.
Yeah. Yeah.
And some of these assignments can go on for hours.
Yeah.
And so how do we do that if we're alone? How do we do that if there's only two of us?
Yeah. And maybe some of that too is the humility. We've had critical incidents where I have, my head chaplain will say, go to the police station. And I'm like, well, why am I not being sent to the scene? Or why am I not being sent to the hospital? Or am I not being sent to maybe to a family member's home or something like that?
Right.
What use am I down there at the station? Well, there's a use in all of those places.
That's right.
And I need to let go of my ego and be like, well, I may decide in my mind that one place is more important. There's more things happening or more important people in one place or another. I need to just let go of that and be a part of the team and just be a presence. And when those officers filter in at the end of their shift, and they weren't the ones primarily involved, but they still need support too.
Oh, yeah.
And so I'm going to go fill whatever role I'm told to by the chief or my head chaplain or whoever.
Right.
And I'm going to accept that and serve. And like I said, just be present and be available.
That's right.
And if I've done proactive work ahead of time, then I've already got a relationship with some of these people, and some of them may want to reach out to me, or maybe they'll just appreciate that they saw me.
That's right.
They'll reach out to me at a later date.
That's right.
But yeah, it's so difficult to not want to just swoop in and solve things and give answers. That's such a hard thing to resist.
It is. And one of the best pieces of advice that I was given by a chaplain was, if you're a chaplain, make sure you show up at the good things. Make sure you make yourself available at the awards banquets and at the retirements and at the family days and at the good things. Get on the calendar. Find out who controls the calendar for those events and get on the notification list and start showing up for those things, because that's where you start to build relationship.
Yes. Yeah.
And then the other thing that we have to be aware of is that the closer a chaplain gets to his or her department, the more that individual chaplain might be impacted by the tragedy as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
So just bear it in
Yeah.
mind.
You are one of the traumatized.
That's
Yeah.
right. That's right. And we all need support. We all need to figure that out. So.
You actually would have some insight on this as far as having a responsibility while you yourself are traumatized. When your partner was murdered, you were sent to make the death notification.
Right.
How do you feel about that? Is that a good practice?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Why?
Because I had a connection with his widow. Because I had a connection with the family.
Okay.
Because I knew the kids' names and they knew me. I had been at family cookouts. I'd been a part of their life. So having somebody there who is not just a stranger, I think was important. I think it was beneficial. Mm-hmm. I've never asked that question to the family, but I believe it was. So, and
even though it was very difficult for you.
Oh yeah, horrible, traumatic. I would say, it was a traumatic event for me, but I wouldn't change it. I would not do it. And the other thing is when I arrived at the station, I can remember that, and this is something that, how do you prepare for this? Not every officer is going to respond or react to this news in a really productive way.
No.
And some officers might be out kicking things and throwing things and having tantrums and really out of control. I was actually sent to calm someone down on this night that needed calming. And so be prepared that you're going to see emotional reactions from people that you're not prepared for.
Yeah. Yeah. Have a thick skin. Because there'll be misplaced anger.
There will be.
And that'll be a common sight among the police officers.
There will be. Yep. And especially when an officer is killed, I'll tell you, one of the things I used to do as a young officer was I always looked for a reason that the officer was killed. Some mistake they made. Yeah. Some error they made because what I was really doing was trying to cope with my own fears that I could be killed. Mm-hmm. So if I can start picking apart and pointing fingers at, well, they didn't run the license plate before they stopped the car, or he didn't search the guy when he got him out of the car and then the guy pulled a gun, that kind of a thing, then it helps me to feel more secure that that's not going to happen to me. And that's just human nature, and just expect that.
Do you let an officer rattle on and on about all the things they could have or should have done different so they can work through that process? Or do you try to tell them that, hey, that, those aren't legitimate answers. It's just a thing you feel you need to go through. Should we just let them go through it?
I think there's a value to letting someone vent. I think you'll have to assess in the moment to understand whether this, if there's a venting process that's going to help someone make progress, then I think we're in a good place, and allow the person to vent.
Yeah.
Don't judge. Encourage, support. Don't pretend you understand if you don't.
Yeah.
And even if I had to go counsel an officer right now whose partner had been killed, I'm not going to go tell them I know how you feel, because I really don't. I'm not them.
Yeah.
I understand the gravity of it, and I understand the emotional sort of turmoil that happens, but don't pretend you know what they're going through, because you don't.
No.
So, I think at some point, depending on the person's state of mind, it could be helpful to say, okay, you've expressed a lot of things about how you're viewing everything that happened. I just want you to know, in the end, it's not going to change anything.
No.
And we have to figure out a way to move forward. The world is still turning, and we have to move forward.
Yeah. So. You're not rehashing all the details. It's not going to change the past.
Nope.
And diligence and vigilance are important in law enforcement, but hypervigilance can actually be problematic.
Right.
You cannot get inside your head trying to dot every single I and anticipate, the crossing of every single T.
That's right.
You can't. You have to. You could actually get more distracted trying to cover every base possible in a neurotic kind of fashion.
Right. Oh yeah.
That's not healthy.
Right.
And so I can picture, a supervisor yelling at everybody, well, you got to do all these things. And that's true.
Sure.
And they've already been trained and they know that.
Right.
But that kind of venting is a thing that I see after a traumatic incident when everybody's upset.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
So extra grace, extra patience, love people,
Yeah.
you know, few words. We have 2 ears and one mouth.
That's a good ratio to remember. Yes.
Listen twice as much as you speak or more.
Yeah.
And just be patient, And but I think the one thing I would tell somebody is being present is it's the most important thing.
Yeah.
And don't look for the magic words. Don't look for the magic acts. Handle the crisis. Look, I was on a call out recently where a mother was in distress and her dad was there at the hospital consoling her. So I really didn't have direct ministry availability with her as a chaplain, but she needed Kleenex at one point. And so I was, okay, I'll go get you Kleenex. And I ran in and got a box of Kleenex. And then a few minutes later, she said, I'm thirsty. I go, okay, I'll get you some water.
Yeah.
Sometimes that's all we can do.
Yeah.
But if you're there, that's what you do.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. And it's frustrating when you feel like you need to do something. That's part of being in shock and going through this process is feeling like, well, I need to do something.
Right.
And a chaplain feels that too. And you need to kind of push back against that. Be prepared in advance to push back.
Correct.
And to not run around needlessly. You just need to be there.
Right.
And your being there is doing something.
I don't know if you ever feel like you ever ask the question, am I doing any good? Am I making an impact?
Yeah.
I went to roll call one evening. This is in 77th Division, South Central LA, and the detectives came up to roll call and told us about a gang war that was taking place between two gangs. And the Florencias were killing the Canales, and there was no payback. The Canales gang were the victims; they were just repeatedly being victims. And so his request of us in roll call was, man, if you go out tonight and you see a Canales guy hanging out in the street, would you send him home? Because he's going to get shot.
Yeah.
So we left roll call, and I didn't drive more than 4 or 5 blocks. The station was in a pretty bad part of town there, and there was this Hispanic gang member standing in the corner. And so, my partner, I said, let's go talk to this guy, and we started talking with him. And sure enough, he was a Canales gang member. And I said, hey, you're with Canales? He goes, yeah, I'm with Canales. And I said, well, the Florencias are killing you guys right now, right? He goes, yeah. I go, aren't you worried about standing out here? He goes, yeah. and he goes, yesterday I was standing right here and a car with 3 Florencias pulled up and stopped, and a guy got out of the back seat with a sawed-off shotgun. And I said, you're kidding me. He goes, no. I go, well, what happened? He says, that guy walked up to me and stuck the shotgun in my chest. I said, what? He goes, oh, yeah. And then he looked to the left and he looked to the right. And when he looked to the right, he saw a police car 2 blocks away turning away from us. And he looked back at me and he cocked his head and he put the shotgun down and he got back in the car and they drove away. And I said, okay, go home. Just go home. He goes, okay.
Yeah.
So I sent him home. And now I'm walking back to my police car, and I'm wondering, who was that yesterday that was on patrol that stopped a murder?
Yeah.
It wasn't. I knew it wasn't me because that interview that I had with that Hispanic gang member took place on Main Street, and the day before when I worked, I didn't make it to Main Street.
Yeah.
So I knew it wasn't me. But my point is that somebody came to work that day and prevented a homicide.
Yeah.
And they will never know.
Yeah. Well, and same thing with a chaplain. You may prevent a suicide.
That's right.
And never know it.
That's right.
And so just keep showing up, keep being there.
That's right.
That's making a difference.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. So I was asked by this chaplain from another agency, what to do. Right. And there's that endless list of correct answers.
Sure.
And so what I gave them was just one thing to focus on.
Okay.
And something that I've valued in recent years is when the family of the fallen are in a continued relationship with the department.
Correct.
And I feel like that's something that can be nurtured. And a chaplain has a potential to step in and help nurture that. So you can maintain this relationship with these families by remembering important dates. And for some, I've seen some people who are widowed where it was the wedding anniversary that was particularly poignant for them, sometimes several years in a row after the loss of their loved one.
Right.
But holidays are obvious. One's birthdays are obvious. Any of those might be important. And if you can collect all of these dates and certainly reach out to that family, 8 months down the road, a year down the road, 2 years down the road, that's important. But if you can also coach your commanders to do that, if you can get the police chief to do that, the sheriff to do that,
right,
and to remind them, say, look, here's a schedule. You need to send out a message to this family on these dates, and this is over the next 3 years.
Right.
and I've done all the legwork for you. This is the correct anniversary. This is the correct birthday.
Right.
Here's your list. And if you can maybe not only do it yourself, but coach those leaders in law enforcement to do it, I think that would be valuable.
Oh, huge.
Because they'll do a great job in that first week or so leading up to the funeral.
Right.
And law enforcement funerals are very well coordinated. Other agencies jump in and participate, and these beautiful processions and beautiful ceremonies at the cemetery with bagpipes and drums, and the fire truck comes out and hangs a huge flag for everybody to see, and it's very good. Everybody cooperates on a great level there.
Right.
You probably don't need the chaplain right there because everybody's already given that all of their attention.
Right.
But a funeral serves the function of telling everybody that, okay, now you can move on.
Right.
And everyone will move on except for the family.
Sure.
The family is still going to be reminded of that continued loss, for a long time.
Right. And the same could be true for a partner officer.
Yes.
The trauma from something like this for a partner, or from and maybe if you're not even riding in the same car, but you're the first one on scene and it's your buddy that's down, or,
Yeah. Somebody you went to the academy together, had some connection. Yeah.
Yeah. And I can tell you after my partner was killed, I got so depressed one night that I had the barrel of a gun in my mouth. I was that far gone.
Yeah.
And so, this presence that we can have in showing care for everyone, for the family. And I think what you're suggesting is fantastic. And it kind of dovetails into, like, if you are somewhere, get prepared for this.
Yes. Yeah.
My department has developed what they call a care package. So it could be as simple as a one-sheet form, and each officer fills it out, and it gets information from them. What's your religious belief? If you get killed in the line of duty, whom do you want to tell your spouse?
Yeah. Yeah.
Let's get a name on the paper.
Yeah.
Maybe you've got a regular friend. Maybe you've got a pastor at your church. Maybe you have a neighbor. Maybe whatever.
Yeah.
But let's get this thing ahead of time built up so that we have sort of a play sheet.
Yes.
That when something happens, we can pull that sheet out and go, hey, Ward is the guy that this officer has said is the one that's going to deliver this notification. So let's get a hold of Ward.
Yeah. 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 And you're prepared for that. You've done some legwork ahead of time because in the moment of the crisis, there's going to be things that slip through the cracks. So doing as much of this as possible beforehand is going to help you. Right. And I feel like a chaplain can jump in and help. And there's people listening to this that aren't just chaplains. I mean, obviously there's people that are commanders. They aspire to be commanders. Being attentive to this and asking your team to help collect this information is going to benefit you. This is going to help you take care of your people. Because if your department sees you taking care of this tragic situation this way, they will believe that you will also take care of them if that happens to them. And they'll put themselves in that spot, and they'll say, okay, we're taking care of this family. That's almost the same as them taking care of me and my family.
And this brings up something that I think is worth, sort of getting on the table. 20, 30 years ago, there was no, how do you feel?
Yeah.
if anybody, if you had a shooting and someone said, how do you feel? Your response was, I'm fine.
Right.
He was a bad guy, and I did what I had to do, Well, it's not the same today. Generations have changed. And I would even go so far as to say that even the old tough guys who never shared their feelings were all secretly messed up anyway.
Yeah, yeah.
But particularly for our commanders, our chiefs right now, who might be in an older generation, and their generation might have been of the mindset, hey, rub some dirt on it, you're okay, that it's okay, that we need to communicate to our officers that it's okay for them to say, I'm not okay. I need help.
Yeah.
And to recognize that it takes more courage and more strength to say that than it does to just say, hey, I'm fine.
Yeah. Yeah.
So what kind of an atmosphere are we cultivating in our departments? And are we giving people the freedom to share when they're not okay? Because the last thing you want to do is end up with an officer suicide.
Right. Right.
That you
or an officer working it out differently, like driving too fast, drinking too much,
Correct.
whatever. You can lose an officer. He's like, well, I don't want to see an officer, be out for a week or a month or 6 months because we don't have enough manpower as it is.
Right.
Well, if you keep pushing, you're going to lose that officer regardless. And so let's potentially have that officer next year or
That's
5
right.
years from now.
That's right.
Versus maybe you might not have them now, but it's worth it to keep them long term.
Right. And then the last thing I would say, and maybe this is more for the, I'm jumping around a little bit. Maybe this is more for the what can you do in the aftermath. Debriefs are really, really useful. Most of us storytell trauma. That's how 95 or higher percentage of us, will storytell. Look, all of us have had something traumatic happen to us. We narrowly missed having a traffic accident or something happened and we just barely escaped. And we want to tell that. When you get home, you're like, man, you won't believe this semi-truck went through a red light and missed me by inches. And that's us storytelling out our trauma. Now, getting cops to talk can be hard, okay? So if you're going to try to get officers together to debrief, don't make it your goal that you're going to get them to share their feelings. Make it your goal that you're going to get them to talk about what their role was in the incident and where did they respond from and what did they find. So let's say that you've had an officer killed and it was on a traffic stop, and now you have a half a dozen officers or maybe a dozen officers that are directly affected that were there and saw the trauma and all that. Wouldn't it be great to get those 12 officers in a room and sit down and just one by one, I want to go around this room and I want you to tell me where you were when the call came out and how you responded and what you saw when you got there.
Yeah.
Just tell me what happened.
Yeah.
And one by one to go around and everybody gets to tell. This is something my son's department is doing on a trauma basis when they've had some pretty horrific crime scenes. And this is how they have a licensed therapist that comes in and does this. And this is how she does it. I think it's brilliant because she's not saying, hey, officer, tell me how you feel about this. Because when you ask that, the officer's going to go, I feel fine.
Yeah.
The world is screwed up and I'm part of it.
Yeah.
But if you say, hey, officer, tell me, how did you get the call? Where were you? And what did you see when you got there? Blah, 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 blah. I rolled and I saw this and I saw the blood. And then they just tell what they saw and what happened. But in that storytelling process, there is a catharsis, I think, that takes place, and I think that's healthy.
A commander or somebody in supervision who can maybe make some tweaks to that. That's something you have to do in advance. You can't change that the week of a tragedy.
That's right.
Change it in advance, work it out, game plan it, see, if we can improve it. There might be an improvement that you could make.
And the last thing I would say, particularly if you're a police chaplain, I think, to me, I know there's all kinds of different paths in training to become a chaplain. The International Conference of Police Chaplains, ICPC, is a great organization, and they deal specifically with law enforcement chaplaincy. And they hold trainings all over the country, all different times of the year. It's affordable, and every one of these trainings is hosted by somebody who has been doing police chaplaincy for a long time. And they've dealt with officer line of duty deaths. They've dealt with officer suicides. They've dealt with divorces and alcoholism and substance abuse. And it's a really specialized, focused way to be trained and to establish a network of support. Yeah. And I think that's really important is that, look, if you're a chaplain in Department A and you join, your city comes up against another city, do you know who the chaplains are next door?
Yeah.
And do you have coffee with them? Do you know, you guys, we can use each other.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And one of the things that I'm doing right now is bringing together in Johnson County, Kansas, all of the police chaplains from Johnson County, Kansas. We're trying to, we're going to, I joke that we're going to unionize, we're going to network with one another and get to know each other, because maybe you are a small agency, but you might have a big agency next door that has resources that would be available to you.
Yeah.
It's still your department. You're still the one in charge, but you have resources you can call on.
Yeah, absolutely.
I would roll anywhere. If somebody called me from New York tomorrow and said, man, we just need a police chaplain out, I'd get on an airplane and go.
Yeah. Well, and for like natural disasters, that may be the request.
That's right.
It's like, we need all hands on deck. Can we call from neighboring regions or neighboring counties, that kind of thing?
Right.
For those of you scoring at home, Ward and I are in adjacent counties in Kansas. We're both in the Kansas City metro, but we're not from the same agency or even the same county.
Right.
And so we're just neighboring.
And at some point, I'll tell you this, Jared, you and I are going to come together in one of these, because this is going to grow.
Yeah.
I'm starting in my county, and then we're going to expand it to Wyandotte County, and then we're going to expand it to the Missouri side.
Yeah.
And we're going to get all of us together so that we can share and build networking and have each other's phone numbers. And we need to self-care.
Yeah.
Pastors and chaplains, you need to self-care.
Yeah, that's at my chaplain association. When we have meetings, we'll have, like every other meeting, where it's just us talking about what we've been through.
Right.
And it's kind of a confidential, group counseling, really.
Yes.
And you got a room full of counselors counseling each other.
Storytelling out your trauma.
Yeah.
That's exactly what you're doing, and that's perfect. That's what we all have to do.
Excellent. Excellent. Thank you, Ward.
Thank you. Appreciate your time.